Hey guys, it's Mr. Wishahi, and in this tutorial we're going to be solving two-step inequalities. However, this is when they have a negative coefficient, and you'll see what I mean by that in a second. So you should have your sheet with the little flip-flops on them, and you'll understand a little more why we're using flip-flops for these notes. So the first thing I actually want you to do is take your sheet, fold it in half, because this is going to go in your journal. Okay, and this will be the outside page, and we're going to glue it in a moment, or when you're done with these notes. So this is inequalities with negative coefficients. What I mean by that is if you got a negative 2x or negative 5y, whenever you got a negative whatever, or just negative h. So whenever your coefficient is a negative. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll do a couple practice problems together, and then you'll have some practice on your own. Keep in mind, this is only whenever you're multiplying or dividing by negatives. Only when multiplying or dividing. So, for instance, right here, this negative 4x minus 7 is greater than 1. We know, okay, we're going to add 7. But eventually, we also got to divide by a negative 4. We can't just divide by a positive 4 because we'll still have a negative. So this is only when you see a negative attached to your coefficient, which is 4, and your variable. So negative 4x, negative x, negative 2x, and then negative x over 5. So it's not when you're adding or subtracting, only when you are multiplying or dividing by a negative. Okay, so let's go ahead and get a couple practice problems in. So here you got negative 4x minus 7 is greater than 1. So again, you want to treat this just like you would if you're solving an equation. So let's just pretend we're solving for x. So our first step would be to zero out this minus 7. So you zero out subtracting by doing the inverse, which is adding. So let's add 7 to each side. Okay, that'll get me 8 on this side. This will go away. So negative 4x. Excuse me. Here you got negative 4x and 8 on the other side. So think, how will we solve for x at this point? What's the opposite of this operation? You're right, it's dividing because that's multiplying. So let's divide by negative 4. Remember, we can't just divide by positive 4. We got to divide by the exact same number we see. So negative 4 divided by negative 4, that's just going to get us x. And 8 divided by negative 4, well, 4 can be grouped into, or 8 can be grouped into 4s twice. Whoops, sorry. I'm going to write off the side where I've got a little more space. So 4 goes into 8 twice, but again, since it's a positive and a negative, it's getting negative. Okay, this is where the flip-flopping matters. Since I divided by a negative, my inequality symbol actually flip-flops to the other side. Okay, so now x is less than negative 2. So kind of pay attention to that. Whenever you divide by a negative or multiply by a negative, your inequality symbol flip-flops. So that turns into the opposite. Okay? Let's get, another practice one. Let's go to this side. Alright, so I'm going to draw my train track to split both sides. I got 9 minus x is greater than 10. Well, we first want to zero out any constants. That means any just numbers by themselves, anything being added or subtracted. In this case, it's going to be the 9. I want to zero out that 9. It's a positive 9, so I'm going to zero out with a negative 9. And you do the same thing on your other side. I'm going to drop down my negative x. It's still a negative x. 10 minus 9 is 1. So if you think about it, well, right now we're probably just thinking, well, x is just 1. Well, no, that's negative x. You got to remember that there's an invisible 1 right there that we can't see. Negative 1x. Let me rewrite it. Negative 1x is greater than positive 1. Okay, so to undo this, we have to divide by a negative 1. So that's just going to turn us into x. Do the same thing. Well, 1 divided by 1 is just 1, but it's going to be a negative. And that's where we flip our symbol. So in this case, x is less than negative 1. Okay? So again, if you're dividing by a negative or multiplying by a negative, you're going to be turning your symbol to the opposite direction. Next example. I got negative 2x minus 3 is less than or equal to minus 5, negative 5. We're going to zero out our negative by adding 3. We do the same thing to the opposite side. Well, if I got negative 5 and I'm adding 3, I'm actually going to have some 0 pairs. So 5 minus 3 is 2, but it's a negative. So negative 2x. So again, how do we get rid of this negative 2? By dividing by negative 2. So negative 2 divided by negative 2, that's going to be positive 1. So my symbol flips to the opposite side. So now x is greater than or equal to 1. Let's do one more together. I got negative x over 5 plus 6 is greater than negative 3. So let's go and subtract 6 to 0 out, minus 6. Well, I don't have any 0 pairs, so here I got to add my negatives. Negative 9. So I got x divided by 5 equals negative 9. That's a negative. So keep in mind, this negative could go either to the x or to the 5. It doesn't matter. Let's give it to the 5, as long as only one of them is negative. So this one's a little different, though, because we have a denominator. This is x divided by 5. Start thinking, what is the inverse or opposite operation of dividing by 5? That's right, multiplying. So we'll multiply by negative 5 on each side. So it'll just give us x, but you got to multiply by negative 5 on the right side too. 9 times 5 is 45. And since it's two negatives, a negative times a negative equals a positive. However, since we use a negative, which is negative 5, our inequality symbol needs to flip to the opposite side. So x is less than 45. Let's test our answer. Let's substitute 45 in for x and test our answer. So I got 45 divided by negative 5 plus 6 is greater than equal to or greater than negative 3. Well, 45 times negative 5 is going to be negative 9. We add negative 9 plus 6. Well, that's going to give us negative 3. So this tells us negative 3 is greater than or equal to negative 3. And here it is, because these two are equal to each other. So that's another way of testing your work. So just to kind of recap. Whenever you have to multiply or divide by a negative, your inequality symbol is going to flip to the opposite side. That's only multiplying and dividing. Again, that's whenever you see a negative attached to your variable. Anyway. Okay, guys, so you have some practice problems that are mixed. That some of them have negative inequality or negative coefficients. Some of them are just positive, but hopefully you could take the kind of explanations, what you learned from the previous video and this video, to kind of have a better handle on them. All right, good luck.